What happens when three ordinary humans stumble upon an ancient map leading to a hidden council with unimaginable power? You won't believe how their choice at the final trial changes not just their lives, but the fate of entire dimensions. The morning sun filtered through dense canopies of emerald leaves, casting dappled patterns across the forest floor. Among the trees stood three companions: Elena, a historian driven by insatiable curiosity; Marcus, a pragmatic ex-soldier whose instincts were sharper than his blade; and Lila, a tech genius whose gadgets often saved them from perilous situations. Their journey had started weeks ago, fueled by whispers of an ancient civilization lost to time. Now, clutching the map they'd unearthed deep within an abandoned library vault, they felt closer than ever to unraveling history's greatest mystery. Yet none could have predicted how much closer danger lurked, or how deeply entwined their fates would become with forces beyond comprehension. Elena adjusted her backpack, her fingers brushing against the worn leather cover of the map. She glanced at Marcus, who scanned their surroundings with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to survival. His hand rested casually on the hilt of his sword, though his eyes betrayed a quiet tension. Lila, meanwhile, tinkered with a small device she'd been working on, a portable scanner designed to detect anomalies in energy fields. "If the legends are true," Elena said, breaking the silence, "this map leads to the council, and if we find them—" Her voice trailed off, unable to articulate the enormity of what they might uncover. Marcus grunted, his skepticism evident. "Legends are just stories, Elena. People exaggerate. Get your hopes up too high, and you'll end up disappointed or dead." His tone wasn't cruel, merely pragmatic, a reflection of years spent navigating life and death scenarios. But Elena shook her head, her determination unwavering. "Every legend starts somewhere. What if this one is real? What if the council holds answers to questions we haven't even thought to ask?" Lila chimed in, her youthful enthusiasm cutting through the tension. "Either way, we're not turning back now. Besides, my scanner's picking up something unusual ahead. Whatever it is, it's definitely worth checking out." With that, the trio pressed onward, their footsteps crunching softly against the forest floor. The deeper they ventured, the more the air seemed to hum with an unspoken energy, as though the very land itself was alive and watching. Trees loomed taller, their gnarled branches twisting skyward like skeletal hands reaching for the heavens. Shadows danced eerily in the dim light, playing tricks on their minds. Despite their resolve, unease crept into their thoughts. They were stepping into the unknown, and there was no guarantee they'd return unchanged or at all. You won't want to miss what happens next. As the trio steps into uncharted territory, they'll face trials that test not only their strength but also their unity. Stick around to witness the moment when everything they think they know crumbles beneath their feet. As dusk settled over the horizon, the trio approached the entrance marked on the map, a massive archway carved into the mountainside. Its intricate carvings pulsed faintly with an otherworldly energy, sending shivers down their spines. With each step forward, the air grew heavier, charged with something neither human nor natural. "This feels wrong," Marcus muttered, gripping his weapon tighter. But Elena's determination burned brighter than her fear. "If we turn back now, we'll never uncover the truth," she insisted, leading the way despite the growing unease. Beyond the threshold lay a labyrinthine corridor illuminated by floating orbs of light, guiding them deeper into the unknown. Every echo of their footsteps seemed to whisper warnings, yet they pressed onward, drawn inexorably toward whatever awaited them at the heart of the mountain. The corridor twisted unpredictably, its walls adorned with murals depicting scenes of triumph and tragedy. Some showed humans bowing before towering figures cloaked in shimmering robes, while others depicted battles between shadowy creatures and warriors wielding weapons forged from light. The images were both mesmerizing and unsettling, their details so lifelike that it felt as though the events were unfolding before their eyes. Elena paused frequently to study the murals, her brow furrowed in concentration. "These aren't just decorations," she murmured. "They're records, histories, maybe warnings." Marcus rolled his shoulders, trying to shake off the creeping sensation of being watched. "Or distractions," he countered. "Keep moving. We don't have time to decipher every picture." Despite his impatience, they couldn't ignore the significance of the carvings. Each mural seemed to tell a fragment of a larger story, hinting at the council's role in shaping the course of civilizations. There were depictions of prosperity and innovation, followed by periods of chaos and destruction. It was clear that the council wielded immense power, but whether they used it wisely remained unclear. As they delved further, the temperature dropped sharply, causing their breath to fog in the air. The floating orbs dimmed, plunging the corridor into near darkness. Lila activated her wrist-mounted flashlight, its beam cutting through the gloom. "Something's off," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The energy readings are fluctuating wildly, like something's testing us." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet, and a low rumble echoed through the passageway. The walls shifted, closing in around them as if the mountain itself sought to crush them. Panic surged through their veins, but Elena's quick thinking saved them. Spotting a narrow alcove, she shouted, "Over here!" They scrambled into the recess just as the corridor collapsed behind them, sealing off their escape route. Breathing heavily, they exchanged grim looks. "Guess we're committed now," Marcus said dryly. But Elena's gaze was fixed on the path ahead, her expression resolute. "Whatever lies beyond, we'll face it together." Hours turned into eternity as the corridors twisted and narrowed, testing their resolve with every passing moment. Suddenly, the path opened into a cavernous chamber filled with towering statues depicting beings unlike anything they'd encountered before. Humanoid forms melded seamlessly with animalistic features, their eyes gleaming with wisdom, or perhaps malice. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested another fragment of the map. Before anyone could react, a low rumble reverberated through the space, followed by the sound of grinding stone. From concealed alcoves emerged guardians, stone constructs animated by some unseen force. Each movement sent shockwaves rippling outward, forcing the trio to scatter. It was then that Lila's quick thinking saved them. Deploying one of her devices, she created a diversion, allowing them precious seconds to grab the map piece and flee. As they escaped, the realization dawned. Whoever designed these traps wanted intruders deterred, but not necessarily killed. Why? And who? The statues loomed ominously, their faces frozen in expressions that ranged from serene contemplation to fierce determination. Elena couldn't help but wonder if these figures represented members of the council, or something else entirely. "They're beautiful," she breathed, momentarily forgetting the danger. Marcus shot her a sharp look. "Don't let your guard down. Beauty doesn't mean benign." He was right, of course. The Guardians proved relentless, their movements precise and calculated. They weren't mindless automatons. They adapted to the trio's strategies, anticipating their every move. Lila's gadget, a small drone equipped with holographic projectors, proved invaluable. By creating false duplicates of themselves, she managed to draw the Guardian's attention long enough for Elena to snatch the map fragment from the pedestal. But the victory came at a cost. The chamber began to collapse, its ceiling cracking under the strain of some unseen mechanism. Rocks tumbled down, narrowly missing them as they sprinted for the exit. Marcus shoved Elena aside just as a boulder crashed where she had been standing moments earlier. "Move!" he barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. Adrenaline coursed through their veins as they leapt over debris, dodging falling rubble with split-second precision. Finally, they burst through the doorway, collapsing onto the other side as the entrance sealed shut behind them. Panting, they stared at one another, the weight of what they'd just survived sinking in. "What kind of place is this?" Lila gasped, clutching her chest. Elena shook her head, her mind racing. Somewhere that doesn't tolerate mistakes. Breathing heavily, the group regrouped outside the chamber, adrenaline still coursing through their veins. They pieced together the fragments of the map, revealing a new destination, the Hall of Echoes. According to legends, it served as the gateway to the Council, a gathering of enigmatic entities rumored to possess knowledge spanning millennia. Determined to push forward, they navigated treacherous terrain littered with illusions designed to disorient and deceive. Mirages of loved ones appeared, pleading for them to abandon their quest. Voices whispered doubts into their minds, preying on insecurities. Yet amidst the chaos, Elena found clarity. She reminded her companions why they embarked on this journey, not for glory or riches, but for truth. Together, they resisted the mirage's pull, emerging stronger and more united than ever. Little did they know, the true trial awaited just beyond the horizon. The journey to the Hall of Echoes tested their mental fortitude as much as their physical endurance. The path was fraught with optical deceptions, each more convincing than the last. At one point, Marcus saw his late brother, smiling warmly and beckoning him to join him. For a fleeting moment, he hesitated, torn between longing and duty. But then Elena placed a firm hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "It's not real," she said gently. "Focus on what's in front of you." Her words snapped him out of the trance, and he nodded, shaking off the illusion. Lila, too, faced her own demons. She saw visions of failure, her inventions malfunctioning, causing harm instead of helping. Tears welled in her eyes, but she clenched her fists and pushed through, reminding herself of the good she'd already accomplished. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the Hall of Echoes. The sight took their breath away. Columns stretched skyward, disappearing into mist, while a crystalline bridge spanned a chasm so deep it seemed to swallow sound itself. As they crossed, the air vibrated with anticipation. Then, without warning, the council revealed itself, not as gods or monsters, but as humanoid figures cloaked in shimmering robes, their faces obscured by hoods. Their presence commanded respect, yet there was an undeniable aura of neutrality. "You have proven yourselves worthy," intoned a voice that resonated like thunder. "But worthiness alone does not grant access to our secrets." What followed was a series of trials unlike any they'd faced before. Tests of intellect, morality, and sacrifice. Failure meant oblivion. Success promised enlightenment. Here, in this sacred space, the stakes rose higher than ever. The first trial demanded they solve a riddle woven into the very fabric of the hall. Symbols shifted and rearranged themselves constantly, challenging their ability to adapt under pressure. Elena took the lead, her sharp mind cutting through confusion like a blade. Meanwhile, Marcus stood guard, acutely aware that failure might summon unseen dangers. When the final answer clicked into place, the room erupted in applause, not from the council, but from invisible observers cheering their triumph. Emboldened, they moved to the second trial, a moral dilemma presented as a vision. Faced with choosing between saving countless lives or preserving a single soul, the weight of decision crushed them. Tears streamed down Lila's face as she argued passionately for compassion over logic. Ultimately, their choice earned approval, but left lingering questions about the cost of righteousness. The riddle was unlike anything Elena had encountered before. The symbols weren't static, they morphed and recombined, forming patterns that defied conventional language. It was as though the puzzle itself was alive, testing not just their intellect but their patience and adaptability. "Focus," Elena urged herself, her voice barely above a whisper. She traced connections between the shifting glyphs, her fingers trembling slightly as she worked through the possibilities. Time seemed to stretch infinitely, each second heavier than the last. Finally, a pattern emerged, a sequence that resonated with the map fragment they carried. As she input the solution, the chamber shuddered, and a door slid open, revealing the next challenge. The moral dilemma hit harder than any physical threat. They were placed in a vivid simulation where they witnessed a city on the brink of destruction. A child stood at the epicenter of the impending disaster, crying for help. Saving the child would mean sacrificing thousands of others, while letting the child perish would spare the city. The tension was palpable, each member of the trio grappling with their conscience. "We can't play God," Elena said, her voice breaking. Marcus clenched his fists, torn between pragmatism and empathy. Lila, however, refused to accept the premise. "There has to be another way," she insisted, frantically analyzing the scenario. Her persistence paid off when she discovered a hidden mechanism within the simulation, a failsafe that allowed them to save both the child and the city. The council's reaction was inscrutable, but the sense of relief among the trio was overwhelming. "We're on the brink of the climax. What unfolds next will redefine everything you've seen so far. Don't look away. You simply cannot afford to miss the jaw-dropping twists ahead." By the third trial, exhaustion gnawed at their resolve. This time, the challenge required physical endurance combined with teamwork. Platforms materialized mid-air, forming precarious paths above a void teeming with shadowy tendrils reaching upward hungrily. Trust became paramount as they leapt from one unstable surface to another, supporting each other through near-fatal missteps. At one point, Marcus nearly fell, saved only by Elena's desperate grasp. Her strength faltered, but Lila anchored them both with a grappling hook launched at lightning speed. When they finally reached solid ground, relief washed over them, but the council remained silent, offering neither praise nor critique. Were they impressed, or merely indifferent? Doubt crept in once again, threatening to unravel their hard-won confidence. The trial was a gauntlet of uncertainty, each step fraught with peril. The platforms wobbled unpredictably, forcing them to rely on split-second timing and absolute trust in one another. Marcus went first, his movements deliberate but swift. He signaled for Elena to follow, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. When her foot slipped, he lunged forward, catching her wrist just in time. For a moment, they hung suspended, the abyss yawning below them. "I've got you," he growled, his grip unyielding. Behind them, Lila scrambled to secure the grappling hook, her hands shaking but determined. With a sharp tug, she pulled them both to safety, her breath coming in ragged gasps. As they regrouped, the silence from the council weighed heavily on their minds. Had they succeeded, or had they merely delayed their failure? The lack of feedback was maddening, leaving them to second-guess every decision they'd made. Yet amidst the doubt, a spark of determination remained. They had come too far to give up now. With the final trial looming, tensions ran high. The council unveiled a mirror-like portal, reflecting not their appearances, but their deepest fears and regrets. For Elena, it showed a world where her thirst for knowledge led to catastrophic consequences. Marcus saw himself failing those he swore to protect. Lila confronted visions of isolation, her inventions turning against humanity. Each image struck like a dagger, forcing them to confront vulnerabilities they'd buried long ago. Yet instead of succumbing, they chose to embrace these truths, acknowledging flaws without letting them define them. Slowly, the reflections shifted, transforming pain into purpose. Only then did the portal stabilize, granting passage to the inner sanctum. There, answers awaited, but so too did revelations that would shake their understanding of existence. The portal was a harrowing experience, its reflective surface distorting reality in ways that felt deeply personal. Elena saw herself standing amidst ruins, her books and research scattered around her like tombstones. "This isn't me," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I won't let it be." Marcus faced a vision of his comrades falling in battle, their deaths weighing on him like an unbearable burden. "I'm stronger than this," he muttered, clenching his fists until his knuckles turned white. Lila's reflection was perhaps the most haunting. Her inventions had become weapons, wreaking havoc across cities. "I create to help," she sobbed, pounding her fists against the portal's surface. But as they confronted their fears, something remarkable happened. The visions softened, becoming less accusatory and more introspective. They realized that their flaws didn't define them. Rather, they were stepping stones toward growth. When the portal finally stabilized, it felt like a collective exhale. They stepped through together, ready to face whatever lay beyond. Inside the sanctum, the council revealed fragments of their origin story. Born from cosmic energies during the universe's infancy, they existed to maintain balance across dimensions. Humanity, they explained, represented both potential and peril, an unpredictable variable capable of creation or destruction. Through centuries, they observed silently, intervening rarely. Now, however, circumstances forced their hand. An impending threat loomed, one tied directly to humanity's unchecked ambition. Could the trio rise to meet this challenge? Or would fear paralyze them? Choices lay ahead, each carrying profound implications. As the council spoke, the enormity of responsibility settled heavily upon their shoulders. The revelation was staggering. The council wasn't some distant, omnipotent force. They were stewards, bound by duty to preserve equilibrium. Their words painted a picture of humanity as both a beacon of hope and a source of chaos. Elena listened intently, her mind racing with questions. "Why us?" she asked finally. "Why entrust this task to 3 ordinary people?" The response was simple yet profound. Because extraordinary challenges require ordinary courage. Marcus frowned, processing the weight of their mission. Lila stared at her hands, wondering if she truly had what it took to make a difference. The council handed them a shard of pure energy, pulsating with latent power. "This is your first key," they intoned. "Use it wisely." As the trio accepted the shard, they felt its energy resonate within them, binding them to the fate of countless worlds. The journey ahead was daunting, but they knew one thing for certain. They couldn't turn back now. Back in the ordinary world, the trio found themselves thrust into a reality that felt anything but normal. The relic they had retrieved, a shard of pure energy, began to exert an influence far beyond their understanding. It pulsed faintly in its containment unit, emitting a soft hum that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of existence. Elena, ever the scholar, pored over ancient texts and digital archives, searching for any mention of such an artifact. Marcus, meanwhile, kept a vigilant watch, his instincts screaming that their journey wasn't truly over. Lila tinkered endlessly, her gadgets attempting to decode the relic's properties, but even her brilliance hit a wall. The shard defied conventional analysis, behaving as though it were alive, responding to their emotions and thoughts in ways they couldn't predict. One evening, as the team gathered around the shard, something extraordinary happened. A beam of light shot out from the artifact, forming intricate patterns on the walls. These weren't random shapes. They were messages, written in the same cryptic language etched on the map that had started their journey. "It's communicating," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with awe. But what did it want? And why now? As they deciphered the first message, they realized it was a warning. The balance the council had spoken of was already tipping, and the ripple effects were closer than they imagined. Elena spent sleepless nights translating the messages, her obsession growing with each passing day. The shard spoke of fractures in the dimensional barriers, places where chaos seeped through like ink spreading across parchment. Marcus grew increasingly uneasy, his soldier's instincts telling him that danger was imminent. "We're sitting ducks here," he said one night, pacing the room. "If we don't move soon, whatever's coming will find us." Lila, however, remained focused on the shard itself. She theorized that it wasn't just a key, it was a beacon, drawing attention from forces both benevolent and malevolent. Her experiments led to unsettling discoveries. The shard could amplify human emotions, turning fleeting anger into rage or fear into terror. This thing isn't neutral, she concluded. It feeds off us. As tensions mounted, the trio faced another revelation. The shard wasn't meant to be used alone. According to the messages, there were 3 others scattered across the globe, each tied to a different aspect of creation: life, time, and space. To restore balance, they would need to retrieve all 4 shards and unite them. The thought was daunting but also exhilarating. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were participants in a cosmic game whose stakes spanned universes. The culmination arrived swiftly, catching everyone off guard. The Council tasked them with retrieving a relic hidden within the Nexus, a nexus bridging realities. Success meant safeguarding countless worlds. Failure ensured annihilation. Armed with newfound insight and unwavering resolve, they ventured forth. Within the Nexus, time bent unnaturally, creating paradoxes that defied logic. Past, present, and future collided, forcing them to navigate memories and possibilities simultaneously. Just when hope seemed lost, Elena discovered a pattern, a rhythm underlying chaos. Harnessing it, they located the relic, a shard of pure energy humming with life. Retrieving it triggered a cascade effect, collapsing the Nexus. Against all odds, they escaped, delivering the shard to the Council mere moments before collapse consumed everything. The Nexus was unlike anything they'd encountered before. It was a kaleidoscope of timelines, where moments overlapped and bled into one another. Elena saw glimpses of her childhood, her happiest days intertwined with her darkest fears. Marcus relived battles he'd fought, victories mingling with losses until he could no longer tell which was real. Lila watched as her inventions evolved, some becoming tools of salvation, while others morphed into weapons of destruction. The disorientation was overwhelming, threatening to tear apart their sense of self. Yet amidst the chaos, Elena noticed something peculiar: a recurring motif, a sequence of symbols that repeated across different layers of time. "It's a code!" she exclaimed, her voice cutting through the cacophony. With Marcus and Lila's help, she pieced together the sequence, using it to anchor themselves in the shifting tides of reality. Following the code, they navigated the Nexus until they reached its heart, a crystalline chamber housing the second shard. The moment they touched it, the Nexus began to destabilize, its structure unraveling like threads pulled from a tapestry. Panic surged through them as they raced toward the exit, the ground crumbling beneath their feet. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, making every step feel like an eternity. Finally, they burst free, clutching the shard tightly as the Nexus imploded behind them. Back in the ordinary world, the trio found themselves thrust into a reality that felt anything but normal. The relic they had retrieved, a shard of pure energy, began to exert an influence far beyond their understanding. It pulsed faintly in its containment unit, emitting a soft hum that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of existence. Elena, ever the scholar, pored over ancient texts and digital archives, searching for any mention of such an artifact. Marcus, meanwhile, kept a vigilant watch, his instincts screaming that their journey wasn't truly over. Lila tinkered endlessly, her gadgets attempting to decode the relic's properties, but even her brilliance hit a wall. The shard defied conventional analysis, behaving as though it were alive, responding to their emotions and thoughts in ways they couldn't predict. One evening, as the team gathered around the shard, something extraordinary happened. A beam of light shot out from the artifact, forming intricate patterns on the walls. These weren't random shapes. They were messages, written in the same cryptic language etched on the map that had started their journey. "It's communicating," Elena whispered, her voice trembling with awe. But what did it want? And why now? As they deciphered the first message, they realized it was a warning. The balance the Council had spoken of was already tipping, and the ripple effects were closer than they imagined. Elena spent sleepless nights translating the messages, her obsession growing with each passing day. The shard spoke of fractures in the dimensional barriers, places where chaos seeped through like ink spreading across parchment. Marcus grew increasingly uneasy, his soldier's instincts telling him that danger was imminent. "We're sitting ducks here," he said one night, pacing the room. "If we don't move soon, whatever's coming will find us." Lila, however, remained focused on the shard itself. She theorized that it wasn't just a key, it was a beacon, drawing attention from forces both benevolent and malevolent. Her experiments led to unsettling discoveries. The shard could amplify human emotions, turning fleeting anger into rage or fear into terror. "This thing isn't neutral," she concluded. "It feeds off us." As tensions mounted, the trio faced another revelation. The shard wasn't meant to be used alone. According to the messages, there were 3 others scattered across the globe, each tied to a different aspect of creation: life, time, and space. To restore balance, they would need to retrieve all 4 shards and unite them. The thought was daunting but also exhilarating. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were participants in a cosmic game whose stakes spanned universes. Their next destination took them to the deserts of Egypt, where legend spoke of a lost library buried beneath the sands. Guided by clues from the relic's language, they uncovered a labyrinthine network of tunnels leading to a chamber filled with scrolls and artifacts older than recorded history. Here, they discovered writings that shed light on the Council's origins and humanity's role in the grand design. According to these texts, humans were never mere observers. They were integral threads in the cosmic tapestry, capable of either weaving harmony or unraveling chaos. The Council's intervention had always been a last resort, a safeguard against humanity's self-destructive tendencies. But there was another revelation, one that chilled them to the core. The shards were not tools of creation, they were keys. Keys to a weapon of unimaginable power, forged during the dawn of time and locked away to prevent misuse. Whoever wielded all the shards could unlock this weapon, reshaping reality according to their will. The implications were staggering. Who else knew about the shards? And how many others sought them? As they left the desert, the weight of responsibility pressed heavily upon them. They weren't just explorers anymore. They were custodians of forces that could alter the fate of existence itself. The journey through the Egyptian desert was grueling, the relentless sun beating down on them as they navigated endless dunes. Marcus led the way, his survival skills proving invaluable as they rationed water and avoided sandstorms. Lila used her gadgets to detect underground structures, her scanner picking up faint energy signatures that guided them toward the hidden library. When they finally reached the entrance, a narrow crevice concealed by shifting sands, they descended into darkness, their flashlights cutting through the oppressive gloom. Inside, the air was cool and still, carrying the faint scent of ancient parchment. The walls were lined with shelves carved directly into the stone, each holding scrolls and tablets inscribed with languages long forgotten. Elena's eyes widened as she examined the texts, her hands trembling with excitement. "This is it," she whispered. "Everything we've been searching for." But as they delved deeper, they couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't alone. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and faint whispers echoed through the corridors. It wasn't until they reached the central chamber, a vast, domed room filled with glowing orbs, that they realized the truth. The library was alive, its very essence imbued with the knowledge it protected. The orbs floated around them, projecting images and symbols that formed coherent narratives when pieced together. One sequence depicted humanity's rise, showing how curiosity and innovation had driven progress, but also sown seeds of destruction. Another revealed the Council's origins, depicting beings born from cosmic energies who chose to guide rather than dominate. But it was the final sequence that left them shaken. A vision of the weapon, a swirling vortex of light and shadow capable of rewriting reality itself. The shards were its locks, and only their unity could unleash or contain it. As word of their discoveries spread, shadowy figures began to take notice. Governments, corporations, and secret societies, all vying for control of the shards, dispatched agents to intercept them. Betrayal struck close to home when a trusted ally revealed ties to one such organization, forcing the trio to question whom they could trust. Paranoia gnawed at their unity, threatening to tear them apart. Yet amidst the chaos, moments of clarity emerged. Elena reminded them of their shared purpose, while Marcus's unwavering loyalty anchored them during their darkest hours. Lila, ever resourceful, devised ingenious strategies to evade capture, using technology to outwit their pursuers. One harrowing escape led them to a remote island shrouded in perpetual storms. Here they found the third shard, guarded by a being that defied description, a fusion of light and shadow, intelligence and instinct. Communicating through gestures and emotions rather than words, the entity challenged them to prove their worthiness. The trial was mental, emotional, and spiritual, pushing them to confront their deepest fears and desires. When they emerged victorious, the entity entrusted them with the shard, along with a dire warning. The final piece lay in a realm beyond mortal comprehension, accessible only through sacrifice. The betrayal cut deep. A fellow researcher who had helped Elena translate ancient texts turned out to be working for a shadowy syndicate intent on acquiring the shards. When the trio confronted him, his justification was chillingly pragmatic. "You think you're doing the right thing, but you're playing with forces you can't control. Let the professionals handle this." His words stung, not because they were convincing, but because they planted seeds of doubt. Could they truly bear the weight of their mission? Or were they simply pawns in a larger game? Determined to stay one step ahead, Lila hacked into secure networks, uncovering intel on their pursuers' movements. She rerouted surveillance drones and created decoys to mislead their enemies, buying them precious time. Meanwhile, Marcus trained tirelessly, honing his combat skills and preparing for inevitable confrontations. Elena immersed herself in research, searching for any advantage they could leverage. Their bond was tested repeatedly, but it held firm, strengthened by shared adversity. When they reached the storm-racked island, the atmosphere was oppressive, the air crackling with electricity. Lightning illuminated jagged cliffs, and waves crashed violently against the shore. The Guardian awaited them at the heart of the island, its form shifting between solidity and abstraction. It didn't attack. Instead, it observed, gauging their resolve. The trial it imposed forced them to relive their worst failures and face their greatest fears. For Elena, it was the fear of irrelevance, of dedicating her life to knowledge only to have it mean nothing. For Marcus, it was the guilt of lives lost under his command. For Lila, it was the terror of isolation, of creating something that ultimately alienated her from humanity. When they emerged, exhausted but unbroken, the Guardian handed them the shard, this gesture solemn. "The final piece awaits," it intoned, its voice resonating in their minds. But beware, the path demands more than courage. It demands sacrifice. The final leg of their journey brought them to the edge of reality itself, a place where dimensions collided and logic crumbled. To reach the fourth shard, they had to sever ties with the material world, leaving behind everything familiar. It was here that their bond was tested most severely. Each member faced visions of what awaited if they abandoned the mission. Loved ones pleading for their return, lives of comfort and safety beckoning seductively. Yet they chose to press on, driven by a shared belief in the greater good. When they finally claimed the last shard, the transformation was instantaneous. The four pieces merged, forming a luminous orb that radiated both warmth and terror. The weapon's true nature became clear. It was neither inherently good nor evil, but a reflection of its wielder's intentions. In that moment, they made their choice. Rather than hoarding its power, they used it to seal the nexus permanently, ensuring no one could exploit its potential for destruction. The act drained them physically and emotionally, but it also granted them peace. Returning to the ordinary world, they resumed their lives, forever changed by their odyssey. Though the relic's glow faded from memory, the lessons endured. Courage, unity, and selflessness had saved not just humanity, but the cosmos. And as they looked toward the horizon, they knew their story was far from over. Back in the ordinary world, the trio struggled to reintegrate into everyday life. The weight of what they'd experienced lingered, haunting their dreams and coloring their interactions. Elena returned to academia, but her lectures now carried an urgency that puzzled her students. Marcus drifted from job to job, unable to settle, his instincts telling him the fight wasn't truly over. Lila threw herself into her work, creating inventions that pushed boundaries, yet always mindful of their potential consequences. They stayed in touch, meeting regularly to discuss their experiences and ensure the shards remained safe. The council occasionally communicated, offering cryptic advice and warnings. "Balance is fragile," they said during one such encounter. "Guard it well." The trio took the message to heart, knowing their actions or inaction could tip the scales once more. Years passed, and the world seemed oblivious to the dangers that lurked just beyond the veil. But the trio remained vigilant, their bond stronger than ever. They knew that while their journey had ended, the story of the shards was far from finished. Somewhere, someone else might seek them, driven by ambition or desperation. And when that day came, they would be ready. If this epic saga ignited your sense of wonder, subscribe now for more adventures that transcend boundaries and redefine storytelling. Your support fuels our passion for crafting unforgettable tales.